welcome back. Or welcome if it's the first time. So this is my summer reading wrap up. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with this channel, so there's just everything that comes to mind. I'm trying to do that and sometimes it's a bit tough. I haven't been very good with posting and there are reasons for that. I moved in April and where I now live alone, and it's been taking a bit of time to get some kind of routine going. But when it comes to my reading, I had a plan this year to read 50 books. I am, because of this summer, well on my way. I was at 8 in March. I was at 8 in May. And then in June, I read about half of the stack that I am going to show you today, because I had my summer vacation in there and I read quite a lot during that. But this summer, I managed to read 24 books, 2 of which were 2 stars, 10 were 3 stars, 8 were 4 stars, and 4 were 5 stars. I had a plan when it came to achieving these books. I've been trying to get back to reading for 15 years. I read a lot when I was a kid. I always had a book. And then school got just a bit too much and I stopped reading for myself and was only reading for school. And I've been trying to get back to reading since then, and that's been about 10 to 15 years. And I haven't read a lot in those 10 to 15 years. So this amount is just close to things that I was reading for myself during these 10 to 15 years. This is the amount of books that I was reading at that time. It wasn't that much more than this. So to do that, I decided to go with the Buzzwordathon that Books and Lala created. I am also participating in the Literally Dead Book Club, and I'm going to be reading every single book. So that's the Buzzwordathon is 12 books. The Dead Book Club is 10 books, so that's 22 books. And then I found a third reading challenge on Storygraph called A Taste of Prize Reading, which is 6 books if you do just the actual prompts, and then there's 4 bonus prompts. So that's 10 books in total, and for some reason I decided that I should pick 3 books from each prize, as in a long listed book, a short listed book, and the winner, while the Taste of Prize Reading is just 1 book from the long list, and then I will just read what I want to read in between. So that's kind of how I'm going to do this. I know there's no way I'm going to finish all of my intended reading for the Taste of Prize thing. There's no way I'm going to get through long-listed, shortlisted, and winners, because I picked a shortlisted book that ended up winning. That was 740 pages, and I just don't have the time because I was way behind when the summer started. Now I'm 4 books behind on my 50 book reading goal. So yeah, I'm at a manageable place to catch up if I just throw in some short books to read at some point. Let's start. First book that I read this summer was Confessions by Kane Minato. It's translated by, what was his name? Stephen Schneider. This was for Literally Dead Book Club. This was the May selection. I decided that I wanted to finish this before the live show, so I did. The live show was on June 5th. I gave this, it's a 4 or 4.5 star. This was incredible. I know a lot of people were talking about how you get all the information in the first chapter, but you don't. You do not. There are so many moments in this book where you're oh, no. And then the end. I'm just going to say that. The end. But this book, it's about this class and its teacher. The teacher's daughter dies in the school, and it's about the role the class played in that death and how it impacts the class and the teacher. And the first chapter is her telling them all of this and why she's quitting. This is a ride. This is an incredible ride. It's kind of slow. It's a bit dense. There's long chapters. But it's beautiful writing. It's a beautiful piece of literature. Definitely recommend this to people. Second book It's called Blue Postcards. This was a 3-star. This was one of the Taste of Price books. This is the book I picked that is longlisted for the Walter Scott Prize. It kind of has a 3 stories. It's about this tailor called Henry, who's the last tailor on Taylor Street in Paris. Then we have Yves Klein, who is an artist and the kind of narrator of the story. So Henry and Yves Klein take place in the 1950s, and then we've got the kind of like modern time of the narrator of the story, who's an older gentleman. So Henry is a tailor who makes a suit for Yves Klein. Yves Klein makes paintings in the color blue. This book is written in postcards, but each chapter is like a few lines long, like you would write a postcard, really. It was interesting. I wanted more of a connection. All of this is about the color blue, a little bit of like melancholia, feeling a bit like you don't really belong anywhere, not really having your own place, kind of moving around a lot. Seasonality also. And I wondered throughout the entire book if the narrator was the son of Henry. I don't think it's ever really explained. If I remember correctly, I might have to just like double check, but I don't remember ever getting like that confirmed. He is kind of obsessed with blue and this specific blue postcard that he finds in the beginning of the book, which is a postcard from Yves Klein that was made for his blue paintings and sent to the tailor that made his blue suit. Next book is The Key to It All, which was my Buzzwordathon pick for for June. Prompt was all in the title. This was a 3-star. It is by Joanna Rees. I forgot to tell you. Blue Postcards is by Douglas Bruton. This is by Joanna Rees. This came out in like 2014. I've had it basically since. Been meaning to read it for a while. This book is about 5 people all over the world. We've got Julia Perez, who is in the favelas of Brazil, where she teaches and lives. We've got Christian Eriksen. He is a Norwegian aid worker, a doctor in Africa. He works for African Aid. We've got Harry, I don't remember his last name, who is kind of a stockbroker at a bank in London. We've got Scooter Black. She is a wannabe actress in New York. And then we've got Kimiko, who I don't remember her last name, but she is a Japanese teenager who is living in an abusive household with her stepmother and her half-brother after both of her parents died, if I remember correctly, and works a dead-end job. All of these people, one day they get a key, and the thing about this key is that they can get anything they ask for. Like, if you want a villa in Spain, you're gonna get a villa in Spain. If you want a ride to the moon, you're gonna get a ride to the moon. Anything money can pay for, you're gonna get. And this book is kind of about what these people are gonna do with that money. And like how these people deal with getting that kind of money. Some of them go absolutely crazy, while others use it for very small things, like just making sure their family is okay. So this is good. It was like I said, it was a 3-star. It was fine. Unlike the next book, which in many ways it's the same kind of story. It's a game story with this plot of classism and money and wealth and the wealth gap and all of that, but they are very differently spaced. This one is about 520 pages. The next book is Hide by Kirsten White. So this was the Literally Dead Book Club for June. I was hoping for good stuff with this book. This was a 2-star. This has way too many characters. It feels both too long and too short at the same time. It's very info dumpy. There's at least 2 points where there's an info dump. There's a book they have to find. And then somebody finds the book. They read it. We get all the info from the book. This is about halfway through the book. Or like maybe a third into the book. And then nobody talks about the book again. Nobody reads the book again. Until the end, when someone actually picks it up and puts it in their pocket, and then there is no more mention of the book and nobody else reads the book. That bothered me so much. I was so mad at that, but there's just way too many characters. It feels very shallow. This was marketed as an adult. Every single character feels like a teenager. I understand that some of these characters might have, like, some of these characters have gone through really traumatic stuff and don't necessarily have, like, normal development. So, like, I get that to an extent, but when every single character feels like they're 15 instead of 26, because some of these characters are 26, there's something wrong. It felt so shallow, and you felt so hit over the head with the message of the book. It just bothered me. This one, which has a lot of the same kind of themes, it's just done so much better. But this book is about a group of 14 people that gets picked for this game show, they're told, where they play hide and seek in an abandoned amusement park. They don't know it's an abandoned amusement park, and they're gonna get, I think, $50,000. It's about 230 pages. And we have 14 characters, plus a few other characters that are important. That's a lot. We have like around 20 characters that we get seriously introduced to. And yeah, like I said, 2 stars, because I just cannot give it anymore. I closed this book and I was like, yeah, it's a 3 star, and then I was like, no. And then like a half a minute later it was down to 2, and the more I thought about it, the more infuriated I got. And the more I was like, this is not a 3 star, this is a 2 star, and I want to go lower. Because it's not like badly written, it's just, I feel like you could have used a year of just like, okay, what could make this better? Next book, Taste of Prize Reading. This was both longlisted for the International Booker as well as the Republic of Consciousness Prize. I picked it for the Republic of Consciousness Prize because there was a different book that is in this deck that I picked for the International Booker. But this ended up actually winning the Republic of Consciousness Prize. This is a short story collection by Norman Erickson Pasarabu. It was translated by Tiffany Zhao. The through line in this is LGBTQ+, where every story interacts with that in some way. This was a 3 star, and I debated on a 3.5. These stories were written over a period of time. I think quite extensive one, maybe 5 to 10 years. I don't remember if it said. The first stories weren't quite hitting with me, but the further I got into the book, the stronger the stories got and the better the stories got. So at the end I was very much enjoying this. At the beginning I was like, I don't quite know. Which is why it's a 3 star. I think my favourite story in here is The True Story of the Giant, I think is my favourite story. Or Welcome to the Department of Unanswered Prayers. That's also a good one. They're fun and they're a bit interesting, and they're Indonesian, since the author is Indonesian, getting like a different perspective. Next book was All Her Little Secrets. Wanda M. Morris wrote All Her Little Secrets, which is both my Buzzwordathon pick for April as well as the Literally Dead Book Club for April. The Buzzwordathon was Little or Big in the title. I gave this a 3 star. It was good. I was annoyed by a lot of the decisions the character made. There was a point where she was like, I'm gonna call the police. And then she didn't call the police. But this is about Elise Littlejohn, who's a lawyer in this firm. Her lover, the man she's having an affair with, and her boss gets murdered. And she gets promoted to his job by this very much white company who is trying to bring her in as like their token black person, because she's black and everybody else in this company is white. And there's some kind of conspiracy to that. Mom Cult, I was talking about this book. I think I have actually managed to talk about what I need to talk about. It was good. It was a 3 star. Maybe a 3.5, but a 3 star. I was annoyed by some of the decisions that she made. A lot of them I understood because she's black and she lives in Texas, where she can't trust the police. So a lot of it I understand to an extent. And she's finding this conspiracy about this like white nationalist, like white supremacist, like organization that is very much in the company that she works for. She doesn't know who to trust at all, and she's being framed for this murder because she will not play along with them. Along with this, she's kind of reliving her past. So like a lot of the decisions she makes are really weird and stupid, and I get most of them. There's a few things in here where I'm just like, just do this. Why are you not doing this? Sometimes it just felt a little bit unbelievable, but this is good. So the next book I read was The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I read that on my Kindle, so I don't have that. Like, I don't have a copy of that. That was a 4-star. That was for my best word-a-thon pick for May, where you had to pick a direction, so like northwest, south, east. That was in the title. That took me a very long time to figure out. I liked it. It was good. It's about this housewife called Patricia. She is in this book club that is very boring. So, and somebody in the book club suggests reading crime novels, true crime books and crime novels. And so they make their own book club, like a secret book club where they read crime novels and they don't tell anyone about it. And then there are these weird events happening in their little village, their little town, where children are disappearing in the black section. This is in the 90s. And Patricia realizes that there's a vampire on the loose. She realizes who the vampire is, and she gets the entire book club on her side. But their husbands are all like, no, what the hell is wrong with you guys? And then there's a whole thing about this guy who has kind of wheezed his way into their lives. And this book takes place between like the years of, I think, begins in like 89 and ends in like 96 or something. Like, it takes a decent amount of time. There are really hard chapters to read in this book. It's also quite fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. I love vampires. It's one of my favorite things. I have an entire section in my bookcase that's just like vampire books. I also have an entire section in my DVD collection that is just like vampire books. Because I need a section that's just vampires. It's one of the things I've kind of never get enough of. Next book is a 5-star. I think it's the first 5-star so far, and that is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This was something I read for the Taste of Prize reading. This was my pick for the Dylan Thomas Prize, which is one of the bonus prizes. The Republic of Consciousness Prize was also a bonus prize. This is absolutely beautiful. It also won the Costa Book Awards in 2022. No, 2021 I meant to say. This is kind of like it says on the front, a lyrical modern love story, but it very much is also about what it's like being a black man in modern society and the trauma and anxiety that can come with that, as well as a lot of other things. I have a feeling that it's going to take me a very long time to not think about this book, because I keep gravitating back to it. This is like 150 pages. It's super short, but it's absolutely beautiful. The writing is incredible. The story in this is great. This is a great book. I have so much to say about it because I love it so much. Yeah, also, this is written in the second person. I love what it says here in the back. At once an achingly beautiful love story and a potent insight into race and masculinity, Open Water asks what it means to be a person in a world that sees you only as a black body, to be vulnerable when you are only respected for strength, to find safety in love only to lose it. And that just says it better than I could ever say what this book is about, and it's just beautiful. This is magnificent. I feel like I cannot talk about this book because like there's a lot of things in this that like of course I don't experience. I am a white woman, but this is just, it is so, like, it's heartbreaking, and the way he talks about these things is incredible. And like I said, it is written in the second person, so it kind of places you within the story, and it's beautiful. I have to stop saying it's beautiful, but it's beautiful. Next book is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. So this book was the Literally Dead Book Club for March. I started it in March on audiobook. I don't do well with audiobooks because there are very specific things I have to do while listening to audiobooks. One of them is cook, another one is like yard work. I don't have a yard, but I was like listening to this while packing because I was moving at the end of March, beginning of April, and there just came a time when I was like, no, I can't continue this right now, so I decided to just finish it in my summer vacation, so I finished. This was a 2-star, maybe a 2.5. There were too many characters in this. It was too long. The end, when we're switching between two characters in the same fucking scene over and over and over again, bothered me so much because you could literally write that from one perspective. Or just do two chapters from this woman. You don't need to do 6 from like 2 different people constantly like switching between them with like 2 pages and then another page and then and I was like, I was getting so frustrated because you keep changing characters. Also, it was too long. I did not need all 6 characters. I was everyone in love with this one person. I didn't like it. I wrote, it dragged on for longer than it had to and nothing seemed to be happening for a big part of the book. It could have been 100 pages shorter. So this book is about Jess. She got into some trouble, which is explained, and at one point you're like, really? Is that the trouble? Because I thought you had committed murder or something. The way she's talking about it. But she goes to Paris, where her brother lives, and she is gonna stay with him, but he has disappeared when she gets there. So she stays in his apartment, where everyone seems to have a secret or some kind of relationship with her brother, and she's trying to find him and figure out what happened. It was too long. None of the characters were all that interesting. There's way too many perspectives. There was a time in this book where nothing was happening. Like, literally nothing was happening, because all we were seeing were the same events through like 6 different characters over and over and over again, and then everybody's in love with this brother except for like one person. And it's like, why? I kind of just want to get to meet the brother, who's called Ben, because everybody was in love with him, so I was like, what's important about this dude? It was maybe a 2.5 star. Maybe I could go up to a 2.5 star, but there's no way it's higher than that, because it annoyed me. Like, I don't DNF things, I usually just finish, because I feel like I can't know what I think about a book until I finish it. And sometimes the book itself is fairly boring, but the end makes it great. That sounds weird, but you know, sometimes that's just the way it is. This book didn't do that. I mean, some people could like this, but it was too much. It was too much and not enough at the same time. Next book. It's called Hourglass by Kieran Goddard. This was one of the Taster Prize reading books. This book was for the Desmond Elliott Prize. This was my long-listed pick for the Desmond Elliott Prize, which is one of the bonus prizes. This book is about, in many ways, like Open Water, it's about love, found love lost. It's not about being a black man in modern society, but it is about a character that is a little weird, a little strange, a little eccentric. He's a writer. He writes really weird essays. Like, I'm just gonna find a title, because some of them were really weird. He texts this girl, "The fish is dead, but in heroic circumstances. I hope when I die it is also because I'm trying to breach the walls of a castle." And just, like, he's a bit weird. Not quite ordinary, yeah. Here are some of his essays. It was like, "People bloody love astrology right now because they fear we have funneled the entirety of our collective divinatory power into predictive algorithms." 824 words. "What does remembering mean in a world that never forgets?" 87 words. "Why expensive biscuits are always in vertical rather than horizontal packets and what that tells us about rentierism." 1811 words. "Minimalism will always be a profitable aesthetic because it allows those without taste or discernment to have their empty minds sold back to them as a refinement. Lol." 2,261 words. Like, these are all essays that he's writing. This is a bit, like, he's an eccentric and a weird character. This was a 3-star for me. Like, this is quite obviously written by a poet. So Desmond Elliott Prize is debut authors. This is quite clearly written by a poet. It has a lot of weird, like, this is how all the pages are written. It's not like in the classical paragraphs that you get. It's just, it's sentences, which is much more what you would do in poetry. It was decent. Like, it wasn't bad. It wasn't... This was a 3-star. Like, you could maybe pull it up to a 3.5. Next book is Curse Bunny, which was my pick for the International Booker, which is in the Taster Prize reading challenge. I gave this 4 stars. I was pretty good with all of the stories except for Scars. So this was a 4. After reading the second story, I think, I was like, my favorite I think is the second story. Or The Frozen Finger was also pretty good. I don't necessarily remember the other ones all that much, except for Scars, and I did not like that one. This is a short story collection. It's kind of speculative horror elements. There's some fantasy in there. There's a lot of different elements in there. It's by Bora Chung. It was translated by Anton Her. Next book is Like a Tree Walking by Ivani Cabaldeo. I don't quite know how to pronounce that name. But this is a poetry book. This was for the Dulac Prize, which was a bonus prize in the Taster Prize reading. I picked 4 books for that one actually, because I picked this as like my first, and then there's a 1.5 kind of pick, which is coming later. It's in the stack. Kind of picked 2 books for like the first pick. This one was shortlisted, the other one wasn't shortlisted, but this is a poetry book. I don't really know how to rate or discuss poetry. This was a 4-star. I rate poetry books on the emotions that it leaves me with and the emotions that it makes me feel. I don't rate poetry books on form. I have studied things like that. I am so much, like when I write poetry, I write freeform poetry. I have occasionally tried to put my poetry into like a specific form, but I like freeform poetry, and this is like that. Some of the poems look like this. I don't know if you can see that. This is a pretty good poetry collection, I would say. I really like this one. I don't know how to talk about this book. This is a poetry book. That's what I have to say. It was good poetry for me. But like, I know a lot of people don't like what's called Instagram poetry. I like Ruby Carr, but I've read other Instagram poetry that I didn't like. I like all kinds of poetry. This I liked very much. I also saw this book and I was like, I need this. I also just love this title. I do not have anything to say more about this poetry book than it's a 4-star, and I really like this. Next book was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, which was my buzzwordathon pick for July, where you had to pick a book-related word in the title. So we had library. This was a 3-star. Like, I've read Matt Haig before. One of my favorite books is by Matt Haig, and it's called The Radleys. It's a vampire book. Maybe that's why. I'd heard a lot about this book. Like, I'd heard good stuff. I'd heard bad stuff. I'd heard a lot of the criticism. So coming into this book, I kind of knew all of that. It kind of felt like nothing special. There were parts of this book that just felt a bit dragged out. There were parts of this book that didn't. As someone who has struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts, like depression for most of my life, as well as there have been parts of my life where I was very much suicidal. This didn't really help. Like, this is not something that would have helped me in that state. Moving out was a step out of kind of a gully, out of this depressive episode that I had been having for like a year and a half at least, maybe 2 years. Like, I'm out of that mostly now. It helped just to move in on my own, living on my own, being able to like do things the way I want to do them. But this book, maybe it will help some people. It's not something that would help me, but that's also because like I have things that I would never be able to jump into a body and have no clue who the people around me were and actually talk to them. I would literally just be like, hi. And in my head I would be thinking like, oh my god, I don't know who this person is, what the fuck is happening, what, whoa, no. I'm an extreme introvert, I'm on the autism spectrum, I have selective mutism. I can't talk to people that I don't know, so this does not work for me, really. But this was a 3-star. This is about Nora Seed. She kind of dies. It's kind of like purgatory, or like the in-between state between like living and dying, where she comes to this library where she can change her regret, relive the moments that she regrets. Like, if I hadn't quit that job, where would I be? Then she can like go to a world where she didn't quit that job, except she doesn't remember. Like, she doesn't know anything. She just jumps in her own head and has no clue what's happened. What if I'd moved to Australia? But it's not a bad book, and I see people like, I see that some people might like. Next book is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This was the Literally Dead book club for July. I have the book journal by Books and Quell. The book club journal. There's a question there that's like, what's the theme? And I wrote, I have no clue. I do not know what this book is trying to tell me. This was like a 2.5 to 3 star because it's like decently written, but why? There's so much why in this book. So this book is about Casey. Her husband died. She is an alcoholic. She's an actress. The papers got a hold of everything and her being an alcoholic and everything. So she's kind of in house arrest in this cabin that her family owns by Lake Green, where she literally just sits and drinks and does nothing more. And then she spies on her neighbours, one of which she saves in the lake, who is a former model. And she starts spying on her and thinking that her husband is trying to kill her. And then she disappears. And Casey has no clue what's happening. She's trying to figure it out. Every man in this book is a murderer. I'm pretty sure of that. Then there's this serial killer case. There's these 3 women that went missing in like the past 3 years or something. And I figured out who was the murderer before. There was just a point in the story when I was like, hey, he's the murderer. And then there's this character called Eli. I kind of wanted him to be the murderer because he seemed to be the least likely character to be the murderer. But I kind of wanted the least likely character to be the murderer, but he wasn't. And the pacing in this book is so weird. A lot of people have talked about how like the laws don't make any sense because there is a supernatural element in this. I don't really see that. I think for me, it made sense. You're being explained things to a certain way, and it made sense to me. Like, I have so little to say about this book because I finished it. I was like, yeah, it was fine. But what the fuck was this about? Like, what is the theme in this book? The possible themes that I found since is voyeurism and revenge. There is nothing else. I don't know what the theme is. No, I think what bothered me most was this whole, like, we're setting up stuff in like the first 20, 30 pages and then nothing happens except for what is happening? Is something happening? Did she disappear? Did he kill her? And her just watching them across the lake with a binoculars and just drinking bourbon and scotch and wine. And then we get like multiple reveals at the same time, and then nothing happens. And then we get multiple things happening, multiple twists and reveals, like at around the same time, and then the book's done. And it is so weirdly paced. Like, I don't hate this, and a lot of people hate this. It was fine. I have no clue what the point of this book was, and the pacing was weird. Next book. is Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. It was translated by Sarah Moses. It was originally published in Argentina in 2017. Translation came out in 2020, I think? 2020. This book is about Marcos, and he's a butcher, basically. He works in a slaughterhouse. The world is not the world we know. A virus has come up that makes it impossible for humans to eat animal flesh. So all the animals have been killed. I mean, there's a few like stray dogs and stuff like that, and birds and stuff that you just, like wild animals that you can't just kill every single animal in the world. And they are, well, raising humans for slaughter. There's no explanation of where these humans come from or like where that started. It's been like, he remembers the time before that. He was a butcher before that. He worked for his father in this like family company where they butchered pigs. So he's been doing this, like he just switched to humans. There is a conspiracy that this virus is a made up theory. In reading this book, there was a lot of things in here that I just went, COVID! That makes so much sense. Like, this is exactly what's happening. I wanted to get more of the like socio-political world that's happening and this theory that's going on. It is in times quite graphic. There's a lot of like graphic descriptions of what they're doing to the humans, these specimens, this food, really, because they do dehumanize them completely. And it's very like detached kind of writing when it comes to that, which is very interesting to read. And sometimes you're just reminding yourself, like, these people are human. They are talking about slaughtering humans in this book. But it was alright. It was a 3-star, like 3 to 3.5. Like, it was an interesting story. It didn't quite catch me. Like I said, I wanted more of the like socio-political landscape. It was mostly just Marcos and his thought process, and there's a lot of things happening in this book. Like, he has to go and meet people. He doesn't eat human meat to begin with, and then he starts eating human meat again, and there's a lot of like exploitation and stuff. But it was interesting. I kind of just read Tender as the Flesh for myself, but I've been meaning to read it for ages. Next book is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I didn't check. This was one of the Taste Prize reading books. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize. I think it was shortlisted as well. As you can see, it has a Reese's Book Club sticker. This was interesting. This was a 4-star. This was very firmly a 4-star. It didn't have enough to be a 5. It wasn't bad enough to it was good enough to be a 4. This book is about, it kind of has a few different strands. So we have the character Ava. She's 16. She's in the modern world in London. Her mother is dead. She died like a year ago. She's living with her father. Her father is Kostas. He is a Greek Cypriot. He's from Cyprus. Her mother is a Turkish Cypriot. And there's a lot of history between there. And like one of the threads is the relationship and is how her parents come together and marry. And then there's Yorgos and Yusuf, who have this bar where her parents can meet. This is all juxtaposed with the war between the Greek and the Turks throughout the 20th century. And then there's this fig tree. And one of the perspectives in this book is from this fig tree, which was very interesting to read. It's kind of like Ava hasn't been told about Cyprus a lot. She hasn't gone to Cyprus. A part of the family doesn't want to talk to her because you've got these like clashing groups of people that are kind of at war with each other. Yeah, she doesn't know about all of this. And she wants to. She feels like disconnected from her identity because she doesn't quite know where she comes from. Which is kind of what this book's about. It's very much about identity and like where you're coming from. And there's a lot of very interesting things in this. It's pretty good. It's really good. It was a 4-star for me. So next book is Auguries of a Minor God by Niti Sakaria Epe. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's my guess. This is a poetry book. I gave it 5 stars. It's great. It's beautiful. There's a poetry collection at the beginning, and then at the end there is a narrative poem that takes like half of the book. The narrative poem is about a refugee family who fled. His wife died on the way, and there's a mention of the mosque attack in New Zealand. It was in 2019. There's a point in this where he hears the name of his wife and he completely breaks down. And the rest of that narrative poem is basically just passages from the Quran, which is what was the thing that bothered me most, which is like half of that narrative poem was the Quran. It's passages from the Quran. But otherwise this was beautiful. It was very emotional in many ways. This was a 5-star. I have wondered if I should give it a 4.5, but it's still a 5-star for me, so I don't know how to talk about this again. I don't know how to talk about poetry, but this was really good. Next book is a short story collection. How to Pronounce Knife. I wasn't gonna pick this for the Buzzwordathon, but then I actually think I ended up doing so for August, which was Item, so knife. This was a 5-star. This is beautiful. This is a short story collection where every single story is about immigrants from Laos. Yeah, this is by Suman Kamtamalongsa. Again, don't know how to pronounce, but I can try. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Seriously, I would love to know how to pronounce these names. I just did not put enough time into doing this. But they're all very mundane. A lot of people have been talking about how these are forgettable stories. It's one of the things that I liked about this is how mundane and everyday these stories are. They're just about people. They're just about everyday people. And I think it's beautiful. It's a great book. Every single story had something to say. The first one, the titular story, How to Pronounce Knife, was just kind of heartwarming. Next book is Gay Bar, with the undertitle Why We Went Out by Jeremy Atherton Lynn. This is kind of like an essay collection. It's about gay bars and queer nightlife. This was my 0.5 choice, the Jill Press with Like a Tree Walking. So this I gave 3 stars. I wanted to give it 4. Like, it's very interesting. There's a lot of good stuff in this book. It's a very fun book, but it is kind of like a memoir mixed with history, and sometimes there's a bit too much in each page. It's very dense, and sometimes it's a bit too dense. It feels kind of like 2 books in one. One where you have Jeremy's memoir of the gay bar scene, and then another where you get like the history, and like some of it is very academic while other isn't. So it feels a little bit like 2 books in one, but it's very, I think it's an important book. I think it's a good book, but there are times when things get a bit confusing because there's just too much information on the page. But it was good, and I definitely recommend it. Next is this book. It's Orlus. This is a self-published poetry book, I think. It's like a poetry memoir. It's in Icelandic. Orlus literally means wordless. It's by Guðrún Lára Sveinbjörnsdóttir and Sveinbjörn Bjarkason. It's a father and daughter. The father was an alcoholic and wrote poetry. The daughter found the poetry and writes responses to the poems. That is more like a memoir. Like about her life with her alcoholic dad. He died a few years ago. The word comes from him. Like the title comes from him. And then you get these these fragments of their lives together, interspersed with his poem. So like each page is like this. You've got the poem on one side, and then you've got like the answer on the other. And they're fairly short. And it's like not a very long book. It's like 99 pages. I gave this a 3 star. It's a good idea, I think. The execution is decent. Prose wasn't that great. Like, I really like this concept, but the writing could have been better. Next book. Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This was also kind of a pick for the Buzzwordathon. I gave this 4 stars. I've been hearing a lot about The Wayward Children. I've heard a lot of good stuff about The Wayward Children, and this is one of the things that I picked just because I wanted to read it. I'm interested. Also, it's very short, so I can get through a lot of them in a very short period of time. So that's a plus for what I'm trying to do. So yeah, this was a 4 star. It was very good. I really like this. So you've got Eleanor West and her little like school, boarding school, orphanage, whatever you like to call it, where kids who go through doors that they find and go to a world that fits them perfectly end up, when they have to come back to like their real world, their parents' world, and it's about like helping them readjust to the world that we live in and the world that isn't their own. You got Logic, Nonsense, Virtue and Wicked, which are like the directions in these worlds, and we've got Nancy, who's the kind of the main character in this book. She came from a high logic wicked world. It was like the world of the dead, or the land of the dead, where she had to be as still as she possibly could. Still and quiet. But she loved it there. And then there's a murder. So it's like a murder mystery in about 100 pages. It's like 175 pages. Very short. They're all short. They're all about 170 something pages. They're really good. I like them. Next book is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This was the Literally Dead book club. For August, I gave this 4 stars. I love T. Kingfisher's writing. I have a different book by her. I need to read it, which is the Twisted Ones. I've heard a lot of good stuff. Now I'm super interested in reading like everything she's written. The Fall of the House of Usher is something I've read before, so I reread it after finishing this book because I have never completely understood what happened in The Fall of the House of Usher. Reading this gave a lot more context to that book. It helped clear that story up a bit more. I like it. This is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, which is a fairly twisted and very confusing narrative, but this wasn't. This was very well done. I really like this book. My camera is running out of battery, so I'm kind of speeding up. It's been running out of battery for like 5 minutes. I only have 2 books left. So yeah, this was really good. This was a 4 star. Next book is, whoops, Book of Longing by Leonard Cohen, which is a poetry collection by Leonard Cohen. This is also a 4 star. It's Leonard Cohen. It's gonna be good. There are some poems in here that were made into songs, like Nevermind, which is one of my favorites. The tabs on this is poems I had to read for school once, so because I bought this book for school. It's great. There's a lot of poetry in this. There's a lot of like art. And things like that, so it's a fun book and definitely worth it. This was written between like the 1970s and like early 2000s or something. This is poetry from that. Or some of these are from like 1973. Others are from like 2005. Leonard Cohen, good. Last book was a 5 star, and it is Things I Have Withheld, which was my shortlisted pick for the Jalak Prize. This is by Key Miller. This is an essay collection. Key Miller is from Jamaica. This is an essay collection about race and about your body and about identity and about like your place in the world and how race and everything affects that. This was absolutely gorgeous. This was a 5 star. I read the first essay and I was like, if this is how it continues, it's gonna be a 5 star. And it continued that way. There was a time close to the end where it was like, okay, I don't quite understand why we're doing this, but I get it. And then the last one just clinched the 5. Like, it could go down to a 4.5, but I don't want to. It's too beautiful. It's too good. It's too amazing. This was great. I love it. It's so good. I think everyone should read it. It talks about, like I said, identity and race and how we view each other. It talks about the weird relationship Jamaica has with the word race and racism, where racism isn't even a thing that's talked about. Classism is a thing that's talked about, but they are very much intertwined. So there's a lot of very interesting and fun discussions. There's an essay called Mr. Brown, Mrs. White, and Miss Black, where you get to see this and the effects these different skin tones and the way they the country looks at these different skin tones and how the effect that it has on the characters that themselves. For instance, these 3 people, how all of them face discrimination to an extent and how they all have a certain privilege. It is really good. I think everyone should read it. I think my top picks from like this section are these 2, and they are so related to each other. This one also definitely related to these 2. These are all 5 stars. If we add the 4th 5 star, which is this one, which has a lot of like, these have very similar themes. They also have very similar colors. They're all beautiful. So that's all the books done. This is my summer wrap up done. Finally. I hope I can get it out this week, but like we'll see. It's my birthday tomorrow, so we will see if I have the time. This is my pile. From the summer, my 24 books. Well, 23 because one of them is in the is on Kindle. Tell me if you read any of these and what you thought about them. If you want to read any of these, I think that is it. I will see you next time. My battery is still living, so but yeah, this is everything. Again, my top 4 of this are all about race and identity. And they're beautiful. And you should definitely check them out.